Honestly, considering how my summer went, if I've read 3 of these, I'm doing pretty good. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am going to do a bit of a check-in. You might remember at the start of the summer, I put up a video with 10 books that I wanted to read before the summer was over. Well, summer's almost over, so it's probably time to check in and see if I have actually read them, or if I can't hold myself accountable to anything. So the first book on the list is In Case You Missed It by Lindsay Cout. I had a copy of this from NetGalley, and I also bought a copy of it as like a pre-order from Amazon. And I did read it. I think I read this in like the middle of July. And I did read it. I just read it before it came out. I think I read it around the middle of July. And it follows a woman called Roz who comes home from the US. She has been living and working there for 3 years, but her relationship has broken down and she has been let go from her job. So she comes back and lives with her parents. Except that her parents are kind of going through a whole new phase of their life. So her bedroom is now a 300 square meter shed in the back garden. Her friends have all moved on. Her friends are in new relationships. Her friends are getting pregnant. They're getting married. And she finds an old phone that she used to have when she was younger, and she turns it back on and just messages a couple of people saying that she's back in the area and that she'd love to get in touch with them. And one of those messages turns out to be a kind of a job where she becomes a producer for a gamer who's doing a new podcast. But another one turns out to be an ex-boyfriend of hers who is really, really bad news. And you go through the whole book where she's kind of having to make that realization by herself, which I thought was a really great idea of it. And it's that her friends weren't the ones to tell her that she was kind of pushed to make that decision by herself. The second book on the list is Pretending by Holly Bourne. This was one of my most anticipated books of the entire year. So you would think that that would mean I'd make a priority to read it. I did not. I have not read this book yet. It's still sitting on my shelf. It is still waiting for me to pick it up. I don't think I'm going to get around to it in September. I probably will get around to it in October, November kind of time, but I haven't picked it up. And the next book on the list is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. And yeah, I haven't read this one either. I had really good intentions of reading this book, especially because I loved The Hate You Give so much. But I think that that is still a reason why I'm kind of leading it to the side for a little bit, because I had such love for The Hate You Give that I'm really worried that if I read this one, it might not live up to its predecessor. Next on the list is Bear Town by Frederick Bachmann. And I have started this one, I just haven't finished it yet. I started it as part of a buddy read with my friend Paige from Pages with Paige. And then one Friday evening, I left it in the office while I was at work. And then I was out sick from work for the rest of the week after that. So I read none of it in that week. And then I haven't really picked it up since. I know exactly where it is. I haven't really gotten around to it. I think it's also kind of brought on from this point that I'm not connecting with it as much as I thought that I would. And I'm not loving it as much as I thought that I would. So I think that that might be a reason why I just haven't been actively reaching for it. So I did read If I Never Met You by Barry McFarlane, but I didn't love it. I felt like it was very kind of performative because it was written by a white author, but the main character was black. I didn't really like that part of it, even though I did really enjoy some parts of the book. That was a really big factor for the rating that I ended up giving it, which was 2 stars. I felt like a lot of the plot got a little bit less believable and a little bit more ridiculous as you got into the book. And while I did read it, I didn't really enjoy this one. Next on the list was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. And I did read this one. I think I read it in around a 24-hour period when I just took a weekend at like the start of May or the middle of May and read just Black authors for those 24 hours. I think I read most of it within that 24 hours, but then I just kept reading because I was so engrossed with this book. There were a couple of plot lines that I didn't really buy into, such as the relationship between Kelly and Alex and Amira at the end of the book. I don't think I really bought into that very much, but there was one thing I loved throughout the whole of this book, and that is Briar, the little toddler for whom Amira is the babysitter. I absolutely adored her. She was probably the best thing about that whole book. The next book that I put on that list was Royals by Rachel Hawkins, and it turns out that that would have been a really good book to read because I got a copy of the sequel, Her Royal Highness, as like a birthday present from one of my subscribers, one of my followers on Twitter. So I did read it. Haven't read the sequel yet, but I did read, and I kind of enjoyed the first book. Again, I'm a very character-driven reader, so there were a couple of things about certain characters that I didn't really enjoy. I didn't really enjoy Miles's whole little group when he's together in Scotland, when they're all together. It brought out a completely different side of him that I didn't really enjoy. I also didn't warm very well to Ellie, who is Daisy's sister, the sister who gets engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. I didn't really love her very much, but I really, really enjoyed Daisy, and I thought that she was such a great main character. I loved the setting in Scotland, and I am definitely looking forward to reading the sequel of that one. The next book on my list is one of my most hyped for 2020, and it was one that I was absolutely certain I was going to read. So I am really quite surprised that I haven't picked up Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. So Lindsay James, who's an author and she's one of my closest friends, she has read this throughout the summer and she loved it. She gave it like 4 stars, I think. And that should have spurred me on to read it too, but it didn't, and I still haven't picked it up. But I think the cover of that one kind of screams more autumny vibes to me than it does of summer. So I think I'm going to put it on my autumn TBR, and then hopefully it'll be ticked off once and for all. Finally, the last book on that list was Scenes of Graphic Nature by Caroline O'Donoghue. I did read that book. I think I read it at like the end of July. It was probably the last book that I had finished in July. I went into it with very few expectations, even though I knew that one of my friends from back in Dublin had read it and really enjoyed it. I went in with not a lot of expectations. I just went in looking for a good book, and it certainly delivered that for me. I got so caught up in the rural Ireland setting that it's somewhere that I grew up, so it's something that I know so well. And also there was a mention of the town where I grew up, so that was another kind of a close connector for me. Having a little mystery running throughout the whole book made it such a gripping read. It's definitely one that I would recommend to you. That is my progress on the 10 books that I should have read this summer. So if my calculations are right, there are 6 that I have read, and there are 4 that I need to still get to. 4 that are on these shelves behind me, and that I'm definitely going to have to get through soon. Please let me know which one I should get to first. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now get on out of here.